You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, greetings, everyone. You're here on another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm going to be your host. My name is Doug Thorpe, and today I've got a fellow coach and advisor consultant type guy. His name is Gordon Tredgold. Gordon has published a couple of books, and he is all about studies that he's done on how to create achievable, sustainable performance. And that is always a topic that's in the heart and mind of leaders because, hey, if you can't move your organization forward, what are you doing? You know, maybe somebody else needs to be there. But Gordon, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I know I wasn't reading from the official bio, so if I may ask you, what did I leave out of that?
I think possibly something that's not in it, which is, the name of your show. I'm from Yorkshire, and we are known for our pragmatic common sense. just get on with it, lad, and get it done, get it sorted. And I think that's been a fundamental part of my leadership. Don't be phased. Just head down, practical common sense, and find a way.
Well, I have landed on that mantra for a long time now because of my own experience in the business world. I was always confounded by those above me who seemed to enjoy making things way more complex than they needed to be. And for me, I have some roots in the military, and the military is famous for the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. And when you think about it, that's not to degrade anybody's persona, but rather it's an urgency and a necessity when you think of things in the heat of battle and you've got to move and adjust. You can't have a long, complex set of instructions.
No.
You got to say point A to point B, boom, let's go. And I realize with advent of technologies that there's complexities in the world, but as we are about leading teams and influencing people, it comes down to the human element of it. And you got to be direct. You got to be clear.
Yeah, I don't actually like the KISS mnemonic because it implies there's a degree of stupidity in it. Keeping things simple is difficult and requires a level of expertise and understanding. And I think it kind of gets undersold with that "keep it simple, stupid" added to the end of it. But yeah, that's been my mantra, and a lot of, never in the military, but I played a lot of contact sports. I played a lot of rugby, and when you're under the cosh, and it's probably a bit harsh of me to say that some of the big guys in the team weren't the most intellectually adept. You can't have complex strategies. You've got to have simple things that they can just understand, fall back on, and then execute flawlessly. And simple things allow you to execute flawlessly. Complex things allow you to screw up in any manner of ways imaginable. So yeah, keep it simple. I mean, and I think it is one of my superpowers that over the years has just become more and more to the fore. And having led teams of 1,000 people across multiple cultures, as soon as you bring in different languages or teams where their first language isn't English, then if the English people don't understand it, people whose first language isn't English are going to understand it even less. So that simplicity of simplicity of approach, and then simplicity of communication of that approach is absolutely critical.
Yeah. A popular term that has arisen, perhaps in parallel with the whole pandemic and leadership thinking that has changed during that time and how to respond to the chaos and crisis, that was, the word is clarity. People have really locked in on the spirit of, how can I as a leader become more clear in my message to my people?
Again, it's like military analogy, but if you can't see the target, how are you going to hit it?
Right, right.
A sniper rifle isn't a rifle. It's a rifle with a humongous sight that allows you to get the target as big and as clear as day. And we need to be having that that same kind of target and view for our teams, so that they can know what's needed to be done and know whether they've been successful or not. And there was a study about what teams are looking for, and one of the top 4 things was clarity. Right. Clarity, support, the freedom to get on with things, and then praise for having done a good job. Those are the top 4 things that teams want: clarity, support, the space to get on with it, don't micromanage me, and then praise when I've done a good job. And one of the people who did the study, they looked at 72 different leadership qualities and said that leadership is different from country to country, because the only things that were 4 consistents and commons were those 4 things. And I thought, what are the other 68 things you were measuring? Because in terms of complexity, you're off the chart, from simplicity. And this is what I tell people, that there is a common leadership approach that works everywhere. Clarity, give people clarity, give them the space to get on with it, support them when they need it, and praise them when they're successful. If you just do those 4 things, that will put you into a leadership category, of the top 5%.
I like that.
And it couldn't be any simpler. The thing about one of the things I love about it is clarity can be difficult. Support, do you have the time? Don't know yet. But keeping out of their way requires 0 effort. And applauding them when they've done a good job, you've got to bring one hand against the other, but in terms of degrees required to do that, nope. It's pretty much a quality that even the most junior of staff can do. So that means there's only 2 things that require any real effort or expertise, and that's providing the clarity and providing the support. Right. It's 2 things. Right. And then keeping out of the way and applauding them when they're done.
We can unpack all those things. The one that I'll start with is that idea of giving the praise. And I frequently talk to leaders, and I will eventually get around to asking them the question, how do you celebrate wins at work? When your team wins or an individual wins the day, how do you celebrate that? What do you do? And most of the time, the answer is kind of like, we don't really do much. It's kind of like we all look at it like that's our job. We're supposed to have that win. We're supposed to cross that goal line.
I worked for a company and I got reprimanded twice. The first time I got reprimanded was because in my department, I'd given out 275 awards. This is across a team of 1,000 people over a period of 12 months. We're giving out something like 275 awards, ranging from a bottle of wine, dinner with your wife, to a 5% bonus. Now, the 5% bonus requires you to do some serious shit. We were saving millions of dollars, and I got told off for doing that. It wasn't company policy. And then I was told to stop. And then I got told off again because they found out that I was still doing it, but I was paying for it out of my own pocket. and they said to me, you need to understand something. We bonus people when we give them their salary. So people are bonused every month. And I said to them, you need to understand something. You understand nothing about bonuses and recognition. Salary gets people to come to work. It's the motivation, the recognition, and recognition is often more important than the bonuses and the reward. That's what gets them to go above and beyond. And I got into trouble again because I was told that, within our company, we only reward big successes, and not only was I rewarding too many people, I was rewarding them along the journey. So we did things like service level management, service reports, and we didn't have any. And I implemented that. The first team to create them accurately, even though every service delivered was red, I gave a bottle of wine to. Because for me, producing, it's like getting on the scales and it's saying you're fat, you need to lose weight. You've got to get some credit for actually getting on the scale and being willing to do it. Now, you're not going to get that again, but as the needle starts to move in the right direction, you raise the bar. They said, we only celebrate big successes. And I went, quick question for you. I went, yeah, sure. And how many big successes have you had? Not that many. I was like, not that many. I wonder why that is. And which team is the most successful team in our department? They went, it's yours. I went, okay. And you see no correlation between we give the most rewards and us achieving the most success. And they said, we've already told you once, no, and people get rewarded every month when we send them their salary. Wow. And I said to him, on the effort, I said, do you have any kids? He went, yeah, I've got 2. I said, what did you do when your first child took 3 steps, dropped on his bum and fell over? And he went, well, we applauded. Really? Did the child break the 100-meter world record? Did he run a marathon? No. But what he did was he took the first steps on a journey to where one day he might run a marathon or break the world record. I was like, yeah, exactly. And that's what we as leaders have got to do. We want to encourage them to to get up and try again, because we know it's nobody achieves the goal with the first effort. And we have to recognize the effort to get them to repeat it so that ultimately they will do that. But this one company just kept telling me, stop doing it, stop doing it. Even though we were successful, I was told to stop doing it.
So if I may ask, how much longer did you stay there after those discussions?
Well, I ended up leaving and taking a package because I was ranked the bottom leader 4 years in a row from my peer group, even though I ran the biggest department with the biggest budget and achieved the most success. I was told that they didn't recognize leaders on the results. They recognize them on their leadership capability. And my leadership capability was the worst of every department. And I said, well, how do I get the great results that are number one in the department? They said, we don't know. But yeah, I'm not a good fit for this company.
That's what I was thinking. Is you're back to the fit question again? And
yeah.
I tell people, if I've learned anything in my trips around the sun, everything you might think about ultimately falls out on a scale. There's a high and a low on the scale, and your fit in an organization may be just one of those. And on the extreme end of the scale is the notion of, I don't fit here, I need to go.
Yeah, the 2 jobs where I was paid the most money, I worked for the worst boss. And the one where I was paid the least, and it was a significant, because if I could have gone back and worked for that boss, I would have done that in a heartbeat, because he valued my contribution. He knew I could do things that he couldn't do, so we would agree and strategize it, and then he would leave me to get on with it, and it was the most rewarding time of my career. Yet fiscally the least profitable, but it's the one that I remember most warmly.
As you were saying that, I'm reminded of one of my last tours of duty in the military. I was transferred to a unit. It was a base support unit, but it was headed up by this colonel that had a notorious reputation for just being a horrible person to work for. I mean, I had heard everything about him, what a terrible human being he was. He wasn't even a nice human, much less boss. But I thought, well, okay. And yes, I was maybe young and a bit naive still at the time, but I went to work for him. And, was I intimidated the first couple of times I got called to his office? Yes. But I listened to what he was really trying to say, and I got it. I mean, there was a wavelength there that we connected on, and I fundamentally didn't care about his style.
Yeah.
And I would go, I would go into his office, and as I was walking down the hallway toward where he was, and I would hear him yelling at his assistant, "Where's Lieutenant Thorpe? Has he gotten here yet?" And I'd start yelling, "I'm here, sir, on my way, and I'll walk in, and then, "Oh, okay, no problem, got it, I got you." And I'm not going to say we ever got to be friends, but I do remember the day we were needing to go somewhere, and he just told me, he said, "I'm not waiting for the driver, hop in my car, let's go." And the first thought through my mind was, okay, I've now entered the Death Star. I'm going to be captured in this vehicle, with this guy. But we drove down the road, and we were talking about some of the matters and problems we had, and I was feeding it back to him and saying some stuff, and I was doing it in my own way, and he started laughing.
Yeah.
He said, "Thorpe, you're hilarious." He said, "You brighten my day." And I said, "Well, not intended, sir, but thank you. I'll take the compliment, And I said, "I'm not trying to be a clown. I believe I know what I'm doing." He said, "Yes, you do." He said, "Yes, you do. And I appreciate that." And we there was just this moment there,
Well, sometimes you can find ways to work with people, and I don't like to say that sometimes people are justified for shouting, but I've had to bite my lip a few times as well, because sometimes I always tell people leadership would be a lot easier if it wasn't for people. It'd be a damn sight easier, because dealing with people can be difficult and stressful. If they can find a way if there's a way to screw up, somebody will find it. So it can be challenging. But if you can find a good boss to work with, it is just, it's a night and day difference. Right. And I think one of the challenges that we face is that being successful at delivery and being a nice person ain't necessarily the same thing. And a lot of companies will value results of toxicity. A toxic environment, and I actually did that during Brexit. I worked for the UK government on Brexit, helping to put some systems in place. And there was one person, and I reported to him, but at this point, I'm not phased. My mother was a screamer and a shouter, so you can do what you like. The woman who had power of life and death raised me to be immune to that kind of stuff. But he said to me when I joined, he said, "It's me and you that need to fix this, because everybody else is an idiot. What do you think?" And I said, "Good to know." And what I really thought was, at some point he's going to be telling everybody I'm an idiot as well, because he doesn't value anybody's opinion but his own. And he was brutal with people in meetings, and he was a contractor and doing this with disabled foreign women in a government environment. I thought, I don't want to sit too near to him, because he's going to get struck down by a lightning bolt at some point in this place. And when I left, the head of the department asked me what I felt of him. I said, he's a terrible person and you should get rid of him. And they said, we can't. He's the only one that knows what's going on. I said, how do you know that? And they said, well, that's what he's told us. I went, yeah. And I can tell you, he's lying. You should get rid of him. But they were prepared to trade the toxic environment he created for the possibility of results. So now, we were going to talk about my journey a little bit. So now I stopped working in the corporate environment as a leader, because and part of that decision was, people tell me I couldn't lead. I thought, right, I'm going to become a leadership expert. I'll show you. And now what I do is, because I've got a tremendous capability to deliver, what I try and do is I try and teach nice people how to deliver, because a lot of leadership is about trying to teach people emotional intelligence and all this good stuff, but basically what they're doing is they're trying to get a-holes to be non-a-holes. That's a process. Right. It doesn't work. Yeah. You can, I have seen it, maybe less than 1% of the time it's happened, but I would rather work with the people who are fundamentally good people, have good leadership skills, but maybe lack delivery capability, and then work with them to give them that. So they've got that, I'm a good person and I can get the job done. Because the more people we have like that, the more productive, I was going to say productive environments, but actually sustainable productive environments, because some of these toxic bosses, they'll get it done, but nobody ever wants to work with them again. So you've got to keep giving them a fresh raft of bodies, which is, you might be getting the results, but you've got low retention, high turnover, and disengaged staff. So even the results you're getting are not the best results, because people are they're not inspired. They're doing it in spite of their relationship with the boss, rather than, he's a detractor, not a subtractor, not a multiplier. And if you've got a good boss with a good team who knows how to get it done, kaboom, now we're rocking and rolling.
Well, I think you're touching on an area, and I often talk to my clients about this, and I'll frequently start a coaching relationship with the question, do you believe there's a difference between management and leadership? And once upon a time, people weren't sure, but nowadays everybody's kind of enlightened, and they all go, of course there is. And but then I'll say, all right, well, what do you think it is? And what I'll end up getting into with them, and a friend of mine many years ago taught me a phrase, and it was the outcome of a huge study that he did. It was a very well done study, but he boiled it all down to the phrase, management is about process and leadership is about people. And I think that speaks to your point. There can be guys in positions of authority that are delivering and hitting the numbers, pushing things out the door, but there's collateral damage with the people. People are burned out, they're frustrated, they're hurt, they're harmed, it's toxic, etc.
Yeah, there's a couple of phrases around that, you manage processes, you lead people. And I think that's true. And when we talk about high performance leadership, I like the Peter Drucker, management is about making sure you do things right, and leadership is about making sure you do the right things. And I think sometimes you can get people who can do things right, but that capability to realize we're doing the wrong thing and change it is what differentiates people. And this is what I try to, if you've got the people who are ostensibly good people and who can do things right, if you can now teach them what are the right things to do or how to identify the right things to do. Now you're ticking both those boxes, and you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit.
Cool.
I would like you to share with everybody your book FAST. That was an
Sure.
acronym that I loved when I first saw it. I'll be honest, I read the book some time ago, and so to just walk us through what that acronym stands for.
So the first thing I want to say is it's an acronym, but I'm not one of these authors who came up with an acronym and thought, how do I create the book? I was actually writing a book about three things: simplicity, transparency, and focus. That's what the book was about. That's what I'm all about. And then my speaking coach said to me, what about accountability? Do you not think that should be included? I went, well, it kind of goes without saying. He said, but if you say it, now you've got FAST. And I was like, oh my God, why did I not see that? So,
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, so the acronym came from spelling the words I wanted rather than I picked a word and, I don't know, leader, and then try to figure words I could do. And this comes back to the premise of helping people, give them delivery capability, because my background, my career in IT was in IT. And when I started, the progression was you're a junior you're a trainee for 6 months, a junior for a year, a programmer for 2 years, a senior for 2 years, and eventually you get into project management. And I thought, that's too slow for me. How can I accelerate it? There's a project over there. Who's doing that? Nobody. What do you mean nobody? It's fraught with danger and everybody's backed away. And I was like, if I do it, will I get the title of project manager? And at that point, they were already fitting me the overalls on and the uniform. Oh yeah, if you want to do it, step this way. So I started taking on the complex and the more difficult things, which allowed me to accelerate. And then I became a turnaround expert. And when I started doing the coaching, the question I asked myself was, do I have a process? My background is mathematics, and pattern recognition is one of my fortes. Do I have a process that I'm subconsciously following, that if I was conscious about it, could I then write that down step by step so other people could follow it? And that's how FAST came about. I went back and I looked at all of the projects I've ever been involved in, and we talked about keep it simple. So as a turnaround expert, there's two things you have to do: figure out what's wrong, fix it. That's my fundamental process. Okay, that's not earth-shattering, I know, but it is simple. And then I was asking, are there common things that go wrong that I'm drawn to? And as I started looking at it, there were four things I found: a lack of focus. People weren't clear about what the goals and objectives were. They didn't know what success looked like, which meant, they would snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, or they would be, just doing the wrong thing. And as we said, leadership is about making sure we're doing the right things. A lack of accountability, and that's about the who. People either hadn't been told what their job was, they were just assumed they would know and it wasn't happening, or they didn't have the tools that they needed, so they couldn't take ownership. And then there was too much complexity. It had been complicated. So there's a lack of simplicity. And then the last one is transparency, which is two things. Do we know what's involved? And if we want to have a baby, it takes 9 months minimum. If you commit to anything less, you're doomed to failure. And on some projects, that's the case as well. I worked on one project and we had a 3-month deadline, and yet the hardware ordering process was 8 weeks. Who came up with that? So one of two things has got to happen. You either need to move the deadline, or we get a different ordering process. But you can't follow that process. And then the second part of transparency, so it's about truth and honesty. The truth is what's involved, and then it's the honesty of where we are on the journey. So do you have a feedback loop that says after 50% of the time, we've achieved 50%? Because if you do, and you're on track, good job, well done, praise all around. If you're not, what do we need to do to fix it? So just by improving focus, accountability, simplicity, transparency, that eliminates about 95% of the things that cause failure. And not only do they do that, but if you avoid them, you actually achieve success significantly faster. And there's an interrelationship between them. The simpler things are, the easier it is to focus. The more transparency you have into performance, the easier it is to hold people accountable. And if you don't have transparency into performance, what are you holding people accountable for? The way they dress, the way they talk, or the outcomes that they're achieving. Without the transparency, you can't do that. So that's the whole genesis of FAST, and focus and accountability improve our effectiveness, our progress towards the target, and then simplicity and transparency allow us to increase our efficiency, the speed with which we, or the effort involved to achieve the target. And if you can improve effectiveness and efficiency, kaboom. Yeah. Results are just going to blow out of the water. Your teams are going to be engaged. They know what needs to be done. They can see that they're doing it. They're accountable. They've taken ownership. They've got the tools, and they can understand it. If you set that up, and a lot of that is pre-work, getting the right focus, keeping it simple, and understanding what's involved and giving the people the tools. That's all pre-work. The only thing left is monitoring the progress on the journey. And then when you've got a problem, fixing it or addressing it.
And as you were describing all that, and I love that model, by the way, and we're back to commonsensical solutions here.
Yeah.
But what I couldn't avoid coming to mind is the classic scenario in business where the goalpost keeps moving. So you come together and you say, here's a challenge we've got. Let's mobilize a project to get this done. Okay, great. Boom, you start all the work, you lay out all that stuff. And even if you check all 4 of those boxes, your FAST boxes, and had the good definition and understanding, all of a sudden stakeholder rolls up and says, I missed a thing. We got to add this chunk over here. Now you've got this classic scope creep, and I know that's mostly a technology term, but it applies.
It's a life thing, isn't it? I'll give you a great example of scope creep. It's $39 to fly with JetBlue. Oh, you wanted a seat. Oh, you wanted to bring some bags. You want automatic, and it adds up. So you're sat there with your $39. It's like, damn, I'm going to have to stand and wear the clothes I'm wearing now. So yeah, right. you've got to have that. And the thing about that is that if you've got transparency, then you can still use simplicity, transparency, and accountability. Because what you can do is you can say, great, you want this, it's going to cost this. Do you have the authority to agree to the schedule change and the budget increase? If you do, then you can have it. If you don't, thanks for that, we'll put it in the backlog. And a lot of times when you don't have the transparency into the overall project, you can end up agreeing to things that you don't know whether it can be done or not. And once you've accepted it and you find out it can't, it's too late. That's no longer scope creep, that's in. So again, this is my background in project management of, protecting the scope, and then just having the guts to just go to the business and say, yeah, if you want that, you can, but it's going to mean a 3-month delay and 200,000 more. If you're happy with that and you're prepared to pay that, then fine. And if we don't do that, we're taking away their accountability for making a decision which has impacted the project.
Right. Right.
And, when we're accountable, and we've got these things, it allows us to hold other people to account as well. And sometimes you've got to hold, the people that, I want more. Yeah, that's fine. You know, with the Jet 2, if I want to take a suitcase, JetBlue, if I want to take a suitcase, that's fine. Here's the price. If you can
Right.
get it all in your hand luggage, you're good to go. If you can't,
Well, and thinking of other elements of that on the focus point, what comes to my mind, again, from a leadership standpoint, often I work with leaders who admit they have trouble delegating. You know, they've got that psycho-emotional tie to how to delegate, and we end up getting into a discussion. And the analogy I give them is, you know, delegation is a lot like parenting. You want to give your kids permission and protection.
permission,
And
authority, and protection.
and you know, you let them go with that. And I use the simple analogy: if you're the leader and you say to one of your engineers, "Go get me a rock,"
Yeah,
I need a rock. Okay, guy shows up with a blue rock, and
yeah,
you're the manager, and you look at it, and you come to this realization: I really wanted a red rock. Well, you didn't
yeah.
say that.
No,
You
that's
weren't
right.
clear. You weren't
Whose
focused
fault
on it.
is that? That
Whose
he's
fault is
brought
that?
more money? Yeah. And I ask this question all the time about empowerment and delegation. Does it require more rules or less? And people say, well, it's less because you want to give them the freedom. So it actually involves, it depends, but can actually involve more because you've got to draw, if what you're telling people is, here's $39,999, go and buy me that red Chevy over there in the corner, registration number, da, da, da. That's not delegation. That's task assignment. But if you say to somebody, all right, you know, I've got a budget of 40,000. I'd like a car that's less than 3 years old, has done less than 30,000 miles, saloon, 4-door, in a dark color. Then they go and get it. But if they come back with something that meets every one of those criteria, you have to say, good job, well done. Even if it is a Daihatsu or some model of car you've never heard of, if it meets the criteria, it's your fault. And I was working with a guy and he said, but don't you think that's a learning opportunity? And I went, yeah. And he said, for the employee, I went, no, it's a
No,
learning
it's for
opportunity for you. You should be more specific about what you wanted. I mean, I was once in a restaurant and they said, oh, we have a surprise menu. Is there anything you don't eat? And I said, shellfish. And I went, okay, no problem. They brought them in. I said, what's that? And they said, it's sweetbreads. I was like, yeah, I meant I don't eat shellfish or sweetbreads. But yeah, it's my fault. I gave them that freedom and now we go. One of the things I do, I've been working with a client at the moment and we've been trying to increase delegation. And one of the things that I've done to help facilitate that, because you're right, there is resistance and pushback. And one of my sayings now is people tell me I'm too busy to delegate. And I say, no, you're too busy because you're not delegating. And I make them go through an exercise of write down the benefits of delegating for you, for the people you delegate to, and for the company. And the record so far is 13 reasons, 13 benefits. And when the person did that, I was like, so are we gonna delegate or not? And they went, yeah, I can't give up these 13 benefits. You know, it's good for the development of the people. It will make you a popular boss. It frees you up for promotion. It increases your level of impact, da, 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 da. But once they see that, there's a willingness to do more of it, but still a degree of resistance. I can't delegate enough. I'd like more work to delegate away. I'm a master delegator.
Yeah, that is, and this notion of busyness, it's
Yeah.
like it's become some kind of badge of honor, and I think it's a badge of something else in a word I won't even use, but
Yeah.
when I run into clients who I've actually had clients say, I'm too busy to get you on my schedule. I said, well, you hired me as your coach.
Yeah.
Where does that fit? Where does that fit?
Yeah, and there are two badges of honor that I completely hate in corporations. One is badge of attendance, oh, I was there till 9 o'clock. so what did you achieve? You know, we reward people for output, not attendance. And then the second one, as you say, oh, I'm busy. Yeah, but busy doing what? I can be busy rearranging the paper clips so that they're all the right way around. Doesn't add value, doesn't help anything, doesn't move us forward. So are you busy on the right things? And I should tell my team, you know, if you're done, go home. You know, if you've achieved the goals for the day, feel free to go home. Do not feel obliged to stay to 9 just because I'm here. Because I've had that where nobody would leave before I left the office. And
Right.
so I would invariably, there's times when I've left early and gone around the back and gone in the door and then gone back to my office, because I don't want people to just be staying there for no benefit. Because
Right.
one, you know, they're getting burned out, or I'm paying them for to be in attendance rather than productive.
Going back to your story of the violating company policy for giving out awards, I had in my early career as a banker, I had been elevated up, and I had a division of about 300 employees, and I refused to make them sign time cards because I had this same attitude, like, I'll tell them what their work is. If we're producing and we're hitting our numbers, I don't care what you work. I don't care how long it takes. And yes, I will monitor varying elements of performance. Yes, I will. People will be held accountable, but it won't be on a time clock basis. And I used to get called into the woodshed on a regular basis. Oh, you know, the attorneys are going nuts. You don't have time cards and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, hooey, so what?
Well, I worked for DHL, name and shame. And I arrived at 8:20, and I got called in by HR, and the HR manager said to me, "Do you know why I've called you in?" I went, I could guess, but I'm not sure. What is it? He said, "You know our hours, 8 to 6, hour for lunch. You arrived at 8:20. That's the second time this week. If it's the third time, you're going to get a written warning." I was like, okay. And he said, "You understand what I'm saying?" I went, yep. I said, "You're going to comply." I went, "On one condition." He said, "What's that?" I said, "I was here till 11 o'clock last night. So if you're going to be checking if I'm in at 8 o'clock, I want you to be kicking me out at 6, because we work, you just told me, 8 till 6. And if you're going to let me stay from 6 till 11, I don't want you getting, peeing me off over 20 minutes, me turning up 20 minutes late." It was like, "You were here till 11 o'clock. I went, "Oh, you weren't here at that time, were you?" Yeah, some of us are committed to the firm and are doing what's needed. But apparently all that's needed from you is that I'm here at 8 o'clock. And again, I might have had a valid argument, but they weren't happy with the way I put it across. But I was peed off.
Yeah.
If you're going to bitch about me coming in late, then bitch about me staying late as well. You can't have it both ways. And not only that, but you have just now demotivated one of your most productive employees, one of your most committed, who was there till 11 o'clock. Because I'll tell you what, today, I don't care whether the building's on fire. At 5:59 and 59 seconds, my coat is on and I'm heading to the elevator. I don't care what's happening.
Yeah. That is, and that's it's those kinds of issues that managers get hung up on and inevitably go the wrong direction.
It's the process, isn't it? The process. Yeah. You have to be 8 till 6. Really?
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Gordon, I'm looking at the clock here, and we're about up on our time for today. I really appreciate you sitting in. I think this has been really valuable, and it's been a blast talking with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'll give you a link to the download of my audio copy of Fast, which I like because it's only 2 hours. So people can listen to that and hopefully get some benefit from it.
That'll be great, and we will definitely share that in the show notes so that everybody can get a hold of it. And is there any other way that people can get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, so in terms of simplicity, I was doing some work with an Ethiopian bank, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. It was Hab to Move something or other. And when I looked for him on LinkedIn, there were 17 people with that name. Bizarrely, I am the only Gordon Tredgold in the entire world. If you want to find me, just put Gordon Tredgold into Google, and I am the only one.
Wow.
I don't know how that happened. It makes no sense. My son's a musician, Dan, and there's 50 of him, but I'm the only Gordon Tredgold in the entire world. And a lot of people would say that's a good thing. We wouldn't want another one.
Well, they only have to get to know you, right?
Yeah, the mold was broken.
Well, great. Well, again, we'll make mention of that as well, folks, in the show notes. And with that, we're going to bring this to a close. I always like to remind people that if you're listening on your favorite streaming service, we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, a channel by the same name.
And we are so good looking. That's well worth
That's right. They need to go enjoy, the scenery there. Well, we didn't even get to your story of your running a marathon. So Gordon is a marathon runner. Maybe in another episode we'll do that. We'll talk about that.
And I used fast to do it.
I know.
I didn't run it fast. I'll be clear about that.
Right, but the training story and getting ready for it. So it definitely does work in other phases of life as well.
Sure.
But anyway, with that, we're going to sign off, say goodbye, and thank you for listening in. We hope you go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.